Welcome to Life in Sirens, Behind and on the Scene, a podcast by first responders. We're your hosts, Sophie,
Jaime,
and Aubrey.
The content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policies or positions of any medical institutions, emergency medical services, or healthcare organizations. Patient privacy is a top priority, and all discussions involving real-world emergency situations are de-identified and altered to ensure confidentiality. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional or your local EMS protocols before making any decisions regarding patient care or medical practices. Listener discretion is advised, as some topics may include discussions of real-world emergency situations. Welcome to another episode of Life in Sirens. Today we're going to be talking about aircrafts and why you can't ever get one to accept your scene flight. We're going to talk about weather, we're going to talk about facilities, and we're going to talk about that one cloud over New Mexico that makes them deny your flight.
Yeah, some serious stuff, guys, okay?
But really what we're going to talk about is we're going to have Soph give us some insight and some wisdom on flights, the real reasons they get denied. A lot of that has to do with crew safety, and we're going to kind of walk through what that looks like.
So, for those of you wondering, we're not just turning down your flight for fun. It's not because we're lazy, because, we would get in trouble for that, guys. If we just, turn flights down all the time because we didn't want to go on them, we would get in trouble. So, I can assure you that it's not just because we want to take a nap.
Let's start with the thing that we hear the most, which is flight declined due to weather. What does that look like? What can different aircrafts fly in? And why do we decline due to weather?
So, it doesn't have to be storming. It doesn't have to be raining. It doesn't have to be doing any of those things for us to have to decline the flight. And this is all up to our pilots, guys, for the most part. Obviously, if we don't feel comfortable, we can say, you know what, we don't want to fly in this. But our pilots they look at the weather, they do all kinds of calculations, they do risk assessments to make sure that this is a safe flight, not only for ourselves, but also for the patient. And we have to get to where we're going. So just because it's sunny in Philadelphia doesn't mean that we are going to be able to get to you and take the patient where they're supposed to go.
Because of that cloud in New Mexico.
Exactly.
Right, you might get it.
Can't forget about her. So, if we are declining due to weather, it's most likely because our pilot said something like, there's convective activity, which means there is a weather system or some kind of weather phenomenon going on that could cause, it doesn't even have to be stormy, but it could cause a storm. It could cause some crazy weather. And helicopters don't really love crazy weather. For the most part, that's what it is for, convective activity, or the ceilings are low, so we cannot...
What does that mean?
...get to altitude. So we have to fly at a certain height. There's, minimums. Every agency might be a little different, but if it's, super cloudy... Maybe it's super foggy. There's just visibility is a big deal because we fly, for the most part, in VFR aircrafts, so visual flight rules. We do have some IFR, so instrument flight is a whole different thing, and there's not a lot of aeromedical in our region, which we are in Tennessee, that are IFR. A lot of the times you're going to get a VFR aircraft, so that means we got to see to get to where we're going. Which I prefer. It freaks me out a little bit to go above the clouds. I don't like that.
That's fair.
My aircraft is not IFR, so I enjoy that quite a bit. But we like to get home just like you like to get home, so we're not going to take any risks because there's a big difference between getting in a fender bender in the ambulance because it's a little icy versus falling out of the sky.
Yeah, those aren't exactly the same.
Yeah.
I think there's probably an impact difference or an explosion or something.
Yeah, that's definitely a part of some sort of trauma criteria, I'm sure, plane falling out of sky.
Yeah,
fall greater than 10 feet, maybe.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Say
That's
3,000.
Well, that mechanism right there.
Even last night, so we're recording this on, what's today? The 7th?
Sunday.
The 6th of July?
Yep.
It was very hazy out from fireworks this weekend. Like, I have never flown in, like, fire conditions. I know that is a thing out west. Like, you could potentially have to turn down for the haze and the smoke in the air. That can happen.
Now, Aubrey and I went and watched a fireworks show here in the old city that we live in.
The old city.
And it was good. But we're sitting there watching it, and we're right by the hospital and by the helipad. And I'm like, do you fly when there's fireworks? Just being randomly shot off throughout the cities?
So I know when you're watching fireworks, it looks like they're going so high in the air. Whenever we're flying over fireworks, they are teensy tiny. It's like not even like cool. You're like, is that a firework? What's going on down there? Like
That's wild.
It's so small.
Because it looks like they go up so high.
Yes, you're so much higher. So like.
All right, but let me give you a scenario.
Yes.
So you are headed to a scene flight. You have accepted said scene flight. You're sitting down in Billy Bob Joe's cow pasture, because that is the best part. They're bringing them to you on a side by side, obviously, the way they do. There is one methy tendency having man in the corner named Billy Bob Thornton, and he decides that he's just going to start shooting off fireworks in said field, and you're already on final approach. What happens? What do you do?
We can abort at any time.
Right? You just
we just be like, stop or abort, and our pilot knows what to do. It's nice to tell him why you're saying that.
Like there's a firework right there?
Yeah, like we're going to get exploded by a firework, because I mean there's a lot of jet fuel in our aircraft,
right?
So that would be the worst case
that's
scenario.
Really what I was just thinking is, like, if you are landing,
yes, you can just say stop or abort, and they know that means something is going on, that we cannot complete this landing.
Whew.
Landing and takeoff, those are like the most critical phases of flight. And we have to be really quiet. It's a sterile cockpit. We don't talk unless it is something important. Like there's something that we could potentially like see as a hazard. Power lines, trees, people, wild animals.
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
Firework.
Oh
my gosh, yeah. 4th of July just really had me thinking about you out there, because I was like, is Sophie going to get hit by a firework?
I know. It is. I mean, honestly, it's a great question, because I didn't even think they were going to be so little. But even we were flying over Nashville the other day. And then we were just so high above these fireworks.
Nothing.
But it is cool to see them.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That's wild.
They're so far away. It's like, I want to see the show.
Well, that makes me feel a lot better about your safety in the air during the holiday season. Because I'm like, what if someone just gets a wild hair and shoots a firework off into the sky, and then boom?
You know, they do be doing that, but can't reach us. At our agency, we try to stay at 3,000 feet above ground level, so pretty high.
Yeah, they're not flying that. They're not going up that high.
I will say, it feels so much higher when you're lifting off, like in a major city. Like, even when you're not very high up in altitude, like you're just like taking off from a rooftop helipad. I always feel like I am so much farther off the ground than when I'm flying through like corn pastures.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, because the buildings, you can really tell, you know how tall they are, so you can really tell how tall you are.
Like, oh, man, that's crazy. It's kind of unsettling sometimes if you think about it too hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that like the same thing when like you're on a rooftop and you're looking over it and you're like just thinking about how this little railing could just fall?
Oh, well, the thing about rooftop helipads is there's never, I mean, I haven't been on one that has a railing. Yeah,
isn't there just like a net, like a story down or something?
It's like, you know, those wire fences? A lot of times there just is like 18 inches of like this wired fence, like perpendicular to the ground, like around the outside of it. So, I don't love that.
I don't love that either.
Yeah. No, I do not love that.
Especially because like a strong gust can really throw you off your balance.
Yeah. Ooh. Some of those big hospitals in big cities are like 15 stories tall. Yeah, it's not ideal. So be careful up there.
Yeah, be careful up there.
So speaking of safety, are there any situations that you find yourself in that you like get to a facility or get to a scene and the patient presents such a threat that you cannot fly them.
Yes, so we don't like to fly combative patients, especially in the case of, like, it's so egregious that the only way that we would be able to get them in our aircraft is, like, to RSI them, so to intubate them and completely knock them down. It's not ideal. We have lots of things, like sedatives, that we carry that could, you know, some people are just
right,
panicking.
but some people you can't sedate.
Some people you can't. So think about, like, those hypermetabolic patients who have taken something and they're really only way you can get them down is to RSI them, which we are permitted to do in extreme circumstances. But our windows can be kicked out. So these airframes, especially for most of the country, they're very small. It's a very small patient compartment. The patient's feet are towards the front of the aircraft, and they are right next to the pilot. Like, the only thing that really separates that is a piece of plexiglass.
Oh my goodness.
And it's not like a full, like, it's just like a half wall kind of thing. So the pilot could go over there and reach the patient's feet.
Oh my goodness.
So you don't want a combative kicking patient who can damage your aircraft or potentially interfere with the safe flying of the aircraft.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, if your patient can kick your pilot in the head, that's probably not ideal.
Right. And chances are, if they are combative, they're that combative where they're, like, physically violent, they're probably pretty stable.
Yeah.
You know how cops are always like, I can't take them in my cop car because they're going to kick my windows out? Is that how it is in an aircraft?
It is much easier to kick out a window in an aircraft. It only takes a couple pounds of pressure. They're meant to be kicked out. So
Right, that's crazy. Because it makes so much sense. You don't want to be trapped in, like, a submerged aircraft or a burning aircraft.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that you can kick them out easy.
Yeah.
But I just never thought about it.
Yeah, it's
That's
definitely sidecar windows. They're pretty hard to. It's definitely not that hard to bust it out.
That's wild.
That is crazy.
So your patient could just kick out your window.
Which would not be fun.
And then kick your pilot in the head.
Right. Like, this is ridiculous,
None
guys.
of this is going well.
Yeah. I do enjoy being alive.
Very well said.
Aubrey told me to say that.
she forced me to say it.
Yeah. So there are lots of reasons that we can't fly a patient. If they're already in cardiac arrest, we don't have enough space to do, like, chest compression, so can't fly that. There are situations where the patient does arrest in flight. We just land as soon as possible at the nearest facility. But
wait, I have a question about that real quick.
Yeah.
I've always wondered this. Why don't you just have a Lucas on a
It's
aircraft?
that small.
It doesn't fit?
Mm-mm.
Between your patient's, like, chest and the ceiling?
Guys, we need to go on a field trip to the aircraft.
I know. What about those tiny ones that are, like, two separate parts? Not the band.
Like the Autopulse.
But there's one that's, like, two separate pieces that's still a plunger, but the battery pack is, like, separate from it.
Honestly, I venture to say it's too wide.
Probably.
Like, that's how small it is.
It's wild. Because that would fix your access problem.
Yeah, no, it is that small. Because it would be ideal, too, to, like, these very sick patients just go ahead and throw it on there like we do on ground. But it's so much smaller than you imagine. It is so much smaller than you think. Even the Airbuses.
That's crazy. So in the event that you have, so say in your tiny airframe, like the 206, in that something like that.
That is not my airframe.
Yeah, well, it's your spare airframe.
Get that thing away from me.
Boo. But, like, so if, say, someone arrests in a small airframe, what do you do in the meantime while you're trying to land? Like, how do you physically get yourself to do compressions?
You do them the best you can, but it's not going to be the most efficacious, like, as compared to, like, when you have wide open spaces. And you don't have a lot of head space, so with your helmet on, like, there's not a lot of overhead, so it's
mostly arms.
Yeah, it's not ideal at all. It is the worst case scenario.
Oh, jeez.
There's not a ton you can do. Hopefully your patient's already intubated.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just run it like a confined space cardiac arrest, essentially. I mean,
yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Like, if you have an arrest where you're trapped and, like, trying to be extricated or whatever, just handle it.
We try to stabilize patients as much as possible before we put them in the air. So sometimes we may stay a little longer on scene than maybe is ideal for the sending facility's comfort, but we want to make sure we get this patient to where they need to go. And I genuinely think people just truly don't understand
Mm-hmm.
how limited our space is. Like, we have to put IV extension sets. I fly 407 normally on our patients that are like 2 feet long because it's so hard to access their IVs. And if you don't put an extension set on, good freaking luck. You know how hard you have to like basically be like pancaked on top of the patient to like reach them.
To reach anything.
And they have to be not sitting up.
Oh my goodness.
So you better do
Yeah.
everything before
I
you
think
lift.
that in my brain, I imagine probably about double the amount of space you truly have. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's like a plane, but in my brain, like, you're really close leg wise, but I think I imagine that you have like arm and head space.
Yeah. I imagined it much taller.
I think this part is the part that I am.
Yeah. I would say that our seats are probably like 12 inches wide. I'm so serious.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like one cheek.
407 has less feet room, but it's like still a bigger like patient compartment.
Yeah.
The 206 has more room between like your knees and the cot. The Airbus, which is like a 135, the person who sits behind the patient, they don't have any space. It is crazy. Like, there's zero space.
Why do they call it an Airbus?
There's like a whole.
It's tiny.
You could honestly, there's enough room to put like 2 stretchers in there. So like it's wider.
Oh wow.
So it is probably more ideal for patient care, but it loads from the back,
Mm-hmm.
which is I don't like that.
Yeah, that freaks me out. You're really
Yeah.
close to the tail rotor. I don't
Yeah,
like that.
which usually they're enclosed, but like it just feels wrong to me. And you face backwards instead of forwards.
Oh.
And at our company, if you are, going to scene or coming from scene without a patient or like whatever, if you're traveling without a patient, you're separated from your partner. So like the medic will sit in the front with the pilot because there's an extra seat up there.
Mhm.
And then you'll just be in the back by yourself
Oh man.
if there's no patient. And I don't like it.
That's a little sad.
Also, I feel like, when like you're like in kindergarten and you do something bad on the playground and the teacher makes you come sit next to them.
Yes.
That's how I feel when I ride in the 135 because I'm like next to the pilot and
You're like,
basically I feel like he's our boss.
hello.
And I'm in trouble.
I feel like that's like how it feels to ride in the front of an Uber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just like,
Yes.
I'm not supposed to be up here.
I'm like, I can't make any sudden movements. Or like it's really late and you'll be like trying to stay awake. I'm like, how are you awake right now?
Right. You're like, sir, I know you have our lives in your hands, but can I take a nap?
Yeah. Which the answer is no. You cannot take a nap. You have to be awake.
Which is
and alert.
lame.
And
Because especially on ground, like say we take a out of county transfer
Yeah.
or we go out of county, that's like, I mean, your partner, sorry, but like that's like your
We've all
napping
been there.
time on the way back.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
I don't have to watch for hazards. I mean, maybe arguably I should be, but I'm not.
I got it, James. It's okay.
Okay, all right.
I got it.
Yeah. The risks are not as high if you're
No.
not.
For sure.
Yeah. And that is another thing about flight that I don't
Mhm.
think I fully did not understand, but I really think that the general public doesn't understand and like other healthcare providers is that it is so exhausting to go up and down, up and down, up and down all day, all night in the
Mhm.
heat, in the cold. You have to do so many things. So like, for example, again, I usually fly a 407. The distance that we're traveling, we have to, so we'll go pick up our patient. We'll take them to the hospital. We land. After we land and hand over care and go back to the aircraft, you have to do like walk-arounds every time. So you have to make sure everything is looking good with your aircraft. There's nothing sketchy going on. Everything's where it should be. Everything's safe to fly. Then we have to go like refuel like every time, and then we
Yeah.
refuel before we leave like the city, for example, and then when we get back we have to refuel again. Like it is like so much effort.
Yeah.
Like people don't understand how much effort it takes to like do one flight.
for sure.
Like I know it's a lot of money to be like flown, but it's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of maintenance and there's upkeep, and it's just like wild. So like one flight, the flight might be like 20-30 minutes, but just add at least
The amount
an
of
hour.
time you spend getting ready for it.
Yep.
What I think that I didn't realize in our area, we have pretty solid access to like higher level facilities of care.
Right.
And I think that people still abuse flight, but I don't think nearly as much. We really only fly things that like have to be flown, that are super critical. And what I didn't know is that sometimes facilities do not do that. And they will call you because they don't, it's like a 3-hour drive to the next facility or whatever.
Yeah.
And they'll call you for rascally things.
It is unbelievable sometimes, truly. Like in our region, like you said, like if you're getting flown, like at our service, or even getting like you're dying. It's bad.
Yeah,
like it's so
for
bad.
sure.
So, and I think generally the public non-healthcare professionals agree. They're like, yeah, if you're in a helicopter, you're dying. Which, in a perfect world, that is what essentially the access is for. But in places where EMS is limited, there's not a lot of ground resources. There are many times when aeromedical is taking transfers or seeing flights that are not what you would maybe typically consider critical. And that's just simply because there's no other resources.
So what does that look like for you guys if you do come across a patient that is super combative, but otherwise are stable, but maybe they're being flown for that reason? It's super far away, or it's the only option they have, whatever it may be. How do you manage that? Because you mentioned, like, if you have a patient that you can't necessarily sedate, like they just won't go down like safely, then RSI is your option, and that you do have the ability to do that. But where do you like kind of draw a line ethically between those question marks of like, do I take this? Do I not? Do I sedate them? Do I not?
Right. So flight is inherently risky. Like there is a certain risk of, going up there and traveling to wherever we're going, and we fly a lot. It's not just like occasionally we get in the air. Like we're getting in the air multiple times a shift at our base. So like our risk is higher because the frequency is higher.
Mm-hmm.
So the more flights we do, the more chance of something going wrong. And because it's an inherently risky job, to put something that could make it even scarier or riskier or, could derail your entire flight is just a bad idea. So if the risks outweigh the benefits, then is there really ethically in that matter, like, is it appropriate to fly the patient?
For sure.
Because if we're just putting everybody at risk for no reason, why are we even here?
Yeah.
Because the goal is safety. The goal is to get people to where they need to go. And if a patient is combative and trying to harm you and your crew, we're not going to get where we need to go. And if we do, it's not going to be a good time for anybody.
Yeah.
Including the patient. So, like, if you have combative patients or agitated patients, the aircraft is not a relaxing place to be. Like, it is very stimulating.
Yeah.
Like, it's loud, it's vibrating. Like, these often are sick patients. Like, we sometimes have to up sedation just because we're in the aircraft, just like on the ground. For anybody who does ground transfers, like, sometimes we just have to bump up sedation because it's so stimulating.
Yes, like the ICU Precedex drip is not going to keep them sedated.
Yeah. So if a patient's mildly sedate or mildly agitated, they're probably going to be very agitated in the air.
For sure.
Like, so first we need to make sure the risks don't outweigh the benefits. And if they do, then at our agency and most agencies, we have a 51% policy, and we can decide that this is not a safe option for ourselves, for our patient, for the system. So we have to go through channels. We make sure that we're making the best decision for the patient, and oftentimes this looks like either working with the sending facility or talking to med control or making sure that we have done all the things to try to reduce our patient's agitation or combative behavior, because there's plenty of medical reasons that this patient could be
agitated.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if they are stable and there is a safer means of transport, then that is in everyone's best interest, even if it means the transfer or the transport is delayed a little bit, because we all want to get home.
Yeah.
This patient does need to get to where they're going, but that's the whole point. They need to be able to get there. And if
and if the patient's health is your number one priority, which we all argue that like our safety is number one and then patient.
Right.
But we also don't want them to die in an aircraft.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
not ideal.
So if they're going to be the cause of said flight issue,
yeah,
probably not great.
and it's not because we're being mean or we don't want to take the flight, because oftentimes when we're having to mitigate problems like this is going to take twice or 3 times as long
Oh yeah, you could have already
as
been
if
in
we
the
just
air.
went. You know, we just
Mhm.
picked them up and threw them in the aircraft and went on our way. So, like, it's not us trying to get out of anything. We just have more of an understanding of the potential risks, which don't look good.
Yeah.
So, I love this job and I want to keep doing it. So, if I want to keep doing it, sometimes that means I have to make hard decisions. That's all.
I like that. I thought that I had a pretty good handle on flight and air until you started doing it. And then I was like, I
Same.
don't know anything
Same.
about this
And I worked
job.
at an agency where we flew people out all the time because it was
Yeah.
so rural.
Yeah.
So, like,
I just didn't
I thought I
know.
knew. I even did the fellowship. I thought I knew. And then you just put it into practice and you realize there are so many factors. There's so many
Yeah.
factors. And we are going to do our best to provide excellent patient care. But the number one priority is your safety.
Absolutely.
So there's even certain situations where we may have to stop patient care even if we need to be intervening, just because there are certain phases of flight where we need to be focusing on what's going on outside the aircraft. And, you know, again, if we don't get to where we're going, then what was the point?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much more detriment that
No.
can come than that.
Yeah. Then whatever you're doing doesn't really matter now,
Right.
does it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our pilots do a really good job of, because occasionally we'll get the pressure from facilities or from sending crews or whatever, like to go. And I think we've all been there on ground transfers
Yeah.
where there is so much pressure to get this patient out of there. And it takes a lot of learning to communicate well and to understand that they don't understand.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, but you can explain it best you can and still people won't. I don't want to say they won't understand, but they won't be empathetic to how
Yeah.
catastrophic this could go
Absolutely.
if it does go.
Yes, because you are being the way you're being right now. Like if someone is, the whole facility is just bullying you to leave, like we could
Yeah.
potentially die in a fiery plane crash.
Yes. Yeah. Or like, oh, sorry, weather moved in and we didn't expect it to. Like, we came to your facility. And, like, we don't like that either. We might be stuck at your facility for literally hours.
Yeah.
That's not ideal for us.
No,
Like-
that's not a good time.
You think us, I know our flight suits look comfy, but they're hot when it's hot and they're cold when it's cold. So we're probably uncomfortable. I'm so sorry. We'll help you manage the patient until we can get out of here. But, like, there's just so many factors that can change at any moment.
Yeah.
And we are just trying to do our best with what we've got. Sometimes people do get upset with us because they'll call it in, and weight is a big deal. I mean, literally everything is weighed on these aircrafts,
Yeah.
down to like a freaking nasal cannula.
Yeah,
Like
and,
all of that
your
weight.
providers are weighed.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have to weigh every day, guys. Every single day. In your flight suit and boots. It's something I've had to get used to.
Right, you're
And
like,
it's on a
"Dang."
piece of paper that everyone can see.
Oh my god. You said,
Yeah.
well, I'm going to break through that barrier.
At least I'm small fry. We also, at our company, we have weight limits. So if you weigh over a certain limit consecutively, you get written up and you could potentially
Yeah.
lose your position. So weight is very, very important. So there's occasional times where we can't carry a patient because they're over our max weight, which is pretty rare because if you are honestly anything over like an average size American, I should say, I mean,
Yeah.
average size American, I would say like a little bit overweight,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you won't be able to fit because it's narrow.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes people think too, we'll like show up and we'll do all the things and we're getting ready and we realize they're not going to fit in the aircraft.
Oh.
And it sucks. It's awkward and it's embarrassing for all of us. Okay? Like we just did all this work too and now
Yeah.
they don't fit.
And
Like,
you're
again,
"Oh,
this is taking us more time than it would be to just get them there.
Right. Do you guys normally have a problem like width or like
Our aircraft is
spine
width,
to
usually.
chest or like left to right?
left to right.
Okay.
So the 206 and the 407 usually is, like the width of the patient.
Mm-hmm.
So really short, like wide ladies or something might not fit.
Yeah.
And then for like the Airbuses, like the 135, that's usually like your distance from like your back to your belly.
Okay.
Just because you have to like load them through like a tunnel, essentially.
Yeah, because they're rear load.
And they have to pretty much be flat when you load them because it's so narrow. That's another reason I don't really love that airframe either, because some people you lay flat and then it's game over.
Code. Yeah.
Right. So say what you will about your favorite airframes. I know there's going to be plenty of people listening to this that are like, why do you like the 407? Because I do. All right. It's just, I feel like it is small, but
I feel like everybody,
it's doable.
You know how like people have certain ambulances that they like live or die by?
Yeah.
I feel like airframes were probably the same way.
It's absolutely the same thing.
Yep.
And briefly, just to let you know kind of what happens when we get toned out. So at my company, the medic will go grab the blood. Your nurse will get like the computer, and you'll go get your helmets. And if it's nighttime, you'll get your NVGs, your night vision goggles. Your pilot will be doing his weather checks and do a risk assessment to make sure that, you know, we're safe to fly. Then we'll all go to the aircraft. The pilot will do his walk around and pre-flight checks. We'll start up the aircraft. We'll both do walk arounds with the nurse and the paramedic. We'll get in the aircraft, and then we do pre-takeoff checklists. We do pre-landing checklists. And then when we arrive at our pickup destination, we do that again. Like, there's a lot of methodology to what we're doing. Again, takes a lot of attention.
Yeah.
You know, if we're landing or taking off, we're making sure our eyes are looking outside of the aircraft to make sure there's no obstructions or obstacles or things that could cause us or the people around us any danger. And then again, we load the patient. We're doing more checklists. We get to where we're going. We're doing more checklists. We're just like, it's very systematic.
Yeah.
We don't skip steps. We just make sure that we are doing everything like we're supposed to be doing, and it just takes a lot of attention.
Yeah, I feel like it sounds really mentally exhausting.
I think that's what people don't realize. It takes a lot of mental load. Plus, the weather is always just extreme. I feel like when you're flying, it's hot, it's really hot. When it's cold, it's really freaking cold. So that's hard to be out in the weather. And, like, we don't have load systems like ambulances have, so we have to, like, manhandle these stretchers. And we, like, one person carries our stretcher.
Yeah.
Like, I just carry the stretcher by myself. Like, it's so awkward. It's heavy. It's heavier than you think, but it's also lighter than you might think. I don't know. But, like, we have to load them without, like, an auto load or, like, even, like, the fulcrum type assistance you would get for, like, a manual stretcher or something. So it is very brain heavy and, like, body heavy, honestly.
Yeah.
Plus, just, like, sitting in that tiny little space, long flights.
Yeah, when you get out, you're just like, ugh.
Yeah, your back hurts. If you got NVGs on at nighttime, it's so heavy.
Just
Helmets are heavier than you think.
Just
like,
kissing the ground like Katy Perry on your way back from space.
Literally. Exactly.
The drama.
Just like that. But, yeah, it's a lot more than you think. So,
yeah.
We're tired.
For sure.
So just give us some grace.
Yeah, I feel like my brain would be super tired.
When you guys get dispatched for calls...
Oh my god, I think I'm about to ask the same question.
Really?
Yeah.
When you get dispatched for a call, what all information do you get before you accept the flight? Any of those things? Or, like, I guess, in what sequence do you get information?
For transfers, we get scene, accepting, facility, and patient weight. And that's all we get before we take off.
What about scene flights?
Oh my god.
Scene flights, you get the same thing, basically. Where you're going. A lot of the times, so we're not going to know why we're going until we get in the air. And we've already accepted and everything, because they don't want your decision to be
Yeah, I don't want to be
Yeah.
flying a 6-month-old and you accept a dangerous flight because you know that's what it is.
Yeah, because
Right.
you feel like the
Yeah.
stakes are higher.
But I guess you would kind of know because you get the weight.
Yeah,
Like
generally.
if it's a kid or not.
Yeah, but some of
Yeah,
these
but do
kids-
we ever tell air the weight when we like request
Mm-mm.
air?
And you know how many times I ask over the radio and no one answers me?
Yeah.
Wah, wah.
Yeah, like the amount of times that I'm requesting air, dispatch is never like, what's the weight?
No.
But
yeah.
they're the ones that are requesting them. So like, I bet you don't get it that a lot of the times.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't usually get more information until we get into the air, and a lot of the times it's just like the chief complaint, and if there's any special equipment. And then most of the time that's wrong. Just like when you get
Yeah.
dispatched for a 911 call,
Yeah.
you're like, what? This is not what we were supposed to be coming to. But they'll give you more information. If you're going to a scene flight, it's kind of nice because you can, as long as, they're not super busy or they have, command on scene or something that you can talk to, you can pretty much ask all the questions you need to
Yeah.
ask. But generally, we just get patient weight and where our
That's
pickup
wild.
is. There are occasions that they want us to go certain places and we're not able to get to that destination because of weather or whatever it is, so we have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But limited information. It is.
Man.
We are spoiled because at our ground service we have CAD computers, so we
Yeah.
get so much freaking information. It's hilarious sometimes. Like,
we get to read all the notes
Oh,
and
yeah.
everything.
yes,
Oh, yeah. It's a good
Unless you're
time.
in a certain part of our county, and then it just comes out as unknown problem constantly.
yes, and nothing else.
What is it?
No
Unknown problem.
further.
Unknown problem.
I will
Yes.
not be elaborating.
They will not.
Nope, they
And
will
that's kind of
not.
how the air is.
But-
You may as well not have.
Yeah,
anything.
man, the CAD really is bomb.
It is, and I just didn't realize how lucky I was.
You're right. So that was actually not my question, but that is a good one. But my question was, when you guys give ETAs, is it your flight time that is the ETA, or is it everything?
For our agency, we do everything. So they calculate your time to like get to the aircraft and rotor up, plus your flight time. So it's gonna be pretty accurate.
Gotcha. So you'll give like a 25-minute ETA.
It's probably
your flight,
25.
yeah, your flight may be 12 minutes,
Yeah.
but like all your checkoffs and everything. Now I don't know if it actually takes that long, but
Yeah.
to do everything,
Yeah.
because that's what
8
we've
to
noticed.
10 minutes is like the goal.
Is the goal, because that's what we've noticed, is that sometimes we'll get a flight time of like 9 minutes and we'll be like, oh, I guess they were already in the air, or oh, I guess it's just that fast.
Yeah.
And then 15 minutes will go by.
I am
Yeah.
very proud that my company, they're pretty accurate. They're gonna give
I like
you
that.
realistic times.
Because that's kind of what I assumed it would be like, but then I thought, I was like, well, maybe they're just giving flight time.
Sometimes maybe that does happen. It shouldn't happen, but I can confirm that does happen.
Yeah.
Our agency very good at giving realistic numbers. It's just sometimes we do get flights though while we're in the air.
Yeah, you're already in the
And that's
air.
pretty
Well, and
easy.
sometimes it's like we auto-launched air, but they are already above you.
Yeah.
We'll just look up. We'll
It's
be like, "Oh my
interesting
gosh."
too to see like that's something we do in our county, right? We'll
Mhm.
auto launch. Some places do not auto launch,
Hmm.
and they just like have the patient for like forever. and
That's
then
wild.
Call us.
Is that like a dispatching thing?
Yeah, I think it's probably
they're
like a
just their
preference.
system?
So normally when, like if you get auto-launched, and again, this is in my brain how it works. Like if you get auto-launched, basically you start like all your weather checks, you start all your aircraft
Oh,
checks,
yeah.
whatever. So if we do like a ground
Standbys,
standby,
yeah.
they basically get all that squared away so that in the event that they're not canceled, they just rotor up and go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, for scenes we don't do a lot of ground standbys. We'll just go.
Just go.
So we don't mind. We're already in the air then, so if somebody else needs us, we're literally already in the air.
Yeah.
So it's not an issue.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Soph, thanks for letting us pick your brain on flight and go through some of the things that we hear pretty frequently around EMS and in hospital and all the things.
And there's so much more, but again, this is just based on what kind of how we run the show at our agency, which could vary from company to company, from
and
region to
Yeah,
region.
I'd imagine region to region too.
Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. Highly recommend, but just be patient with us because we're just trying to be compliant and safe and
Yeah, for sure.
get back home.
Which we appreciate about you. We'd prefer that you make it back home.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah,
that'd be
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Ideal.
Right? This has been Life in Sirens, produced by 3 nerds trying to bring you content that you might actually care about.